Hi friends, Christy here with Little Roots Ranch, and today we're gonna see how much purple I can wear. No, I'm kidding. I actually have a pretty cool topic today, and that is 10 vegetables that if I could only grow 10, what 10 would I grow? Now, I can't take any credit for the topic. I was watching a video from LizZorab, and she's with By the Farm, and one of her viewers had asked if she could only grow 10 vegetables, what would she grow? And I thought that was an interesting thing, and I loved her responses, and I thought, I'd like to do a video like that as well, because we all have our reasons, right? And the reason that somebody may grow something may be different depending on where they're at or preferences or anything like that. For me, I think when I was creating this list, I thought more utilitarian. Like, what do I love eating fresh, easy to grow, can preserve well, and can hold their own in a meal. And so those were kind of large contributing factors to my video. So without further ado, here is my list. And these are in no particular order. But I did write them down just so I didn't forget. So again, no particular order. The first one I have is lettuce. And lettuce is, I guess, or greens in general. But I really like lettuce. The reason I picked lettuce is because, one, I love salads, and two, I feel like everything can be rounded out with either lettuce by itself, like say on top of a sandwich, or with some eggs, or you can just kind of put it anywhere. And I think lettuce is really easy to grow. And of course, I like salads. Now, just as a side note, for those of you that watch a lot of my videos, I have animals, and you can usually hear, usually it's the turkeys, but I'm in the back garden. I was working on some transplants. These are Asian greens. So I'm back near the pigs. So if you hear something that sounds a little bit like a dinosaur, it's just my pigs. Anyway, so lettuce, I think lettuce is a fabulous, I love that you can cut it. If you cut it an inch from the soil line, they call it cut and come again. And that means, or you can pick off the outside leaves and it'll keep going. And I love that. That's really easy. And you can get so many cuts off of it. For me, I sell my lettuce. And so I don't do more than 2 to 3 cuts depending, and I check flavor and all that. But for my own personal use, I'd get like 4 or 5 and the taste doesn't bother me at all. So that's why I picked lettuce. Really just easy way to round out a lot of meals. Obviously, as far as storing it year round, it gets a low score because you can't can lettuce, you can't freeze lettuce, or at least not that I'm aware, but I'm pretty sure, Anyways, my next thing is Swiss chard. Now, I'll tell you, I struggled really hard with picking between Swiss chard and kale. But I tried to be as specific as I could. But if I could create a category that's Swiss chard / kale, I would be all over that. But I thought about it. My favorite thing about kale, besides being healthy, easy to grow, I love the flavor, I put it in everything, all those are things with Swiss chard, is that with kale, I love to dehydrate it and powder it. And then I use it all year long. I just sprinkle it on everything. And to add fresh-ish, sorry, I don't know why I'm playing with wood chips, but fresh-ish kale to everything. And you know what? I actually haven't looked into dehydrating Swiss chard. I guess you probably could. I've honestly never looked into it. If you have, let me know down below. But the reason I picked Swiss chard over kale, and it was really tough, like even now I'm like, is that I really love to put it in everything, like stir fries or whatever. I don't do high heat. Usually, like if I am making a stir fry, it's almost kind of where everything's cooked, and I've actually turned the heat off and I mix it in to like wilt it a little bit. But I love Swiss chard in stir fries. I love Swiss chard in eggs, and just honestly everything. It's really easy to grow, and it's so beautiful. I love whether you have the multicolored one where there's oranges and greens and purple, no, not purple, pink. I don't remember all the colors right now, or the traditional red where it's just like that ruby red. It's so bright, and it's beautiful. And so that's why I ultimately went with Swiss chard. Next, I have tomatoes. Now, I know everyone's heard of tomatoes, of course, and for several reasons. And these would be all tomatoes. And I love things that I can eat out of the garden, because as a farmer, I'm always out in the garden working. And so it's a great way to get a quick and healthy snack. I can just grab a tomato, whether it's cherry or slicing or anything, and just shove it into my mouth, and that's an excellent snack. I also love things that I can eat fresh, like I can add them to salads, or I can cook them for that day's meal or that week or whatnot. But also, what I really love is preserving. And so I usually, during the harvest time, the busy season, I don't have any extra time. So what I'll do is I'll take all of them. I've got a big, deep chest freezer, and I'll just throw them in there into like totes. I don't put them in bags or anything. And they'll keep like that for a really long time. They're still usable even through, they change color after a while. But then in the fall, when things simmer down a little bit, I take those out and I process them. Sometimes the later season ones I'll process fresh or I'll use for sauces or whatever. But tomatoes really, most of my sauces are tomato based, like even aside from the obvious of spaghetti sauce and stuff like that. But just little sauce, I love using tomatoes. So that's why tomatoes made my list. Then I have carrots, and so carrots is next on my list, and then potatoes. But I'm going to mention something about both of them, and that those two root vegetables are really easy to be a good portion of a meal. I love roasted carrots. I love roasted potatoes. I love canning carrots. I love canning potatoes. And they both store really long time. They're absolutely delicious. Carrots I can eat fresh. Potatoes I do not. I think you can, but I'm not sure. I don't do that. But so getting back to carrots now, a lot of people struggle with carrots. So this may not make everybody's list, because you really have to keep on top of making sure that ground has a lot of moisture in it when you are germinating them. And if it's early in the spring, it can take weeks, so many weeks. And then potatoes are easier to grow. I guess I'll just lump those together, but they are two different things. But I love carrots and potatoes for, like I said, how easy it is to add them to any meal. Potatoes obviously are amazing. There's French fry them, scallop them, mash them. Bake them, smash them. I don't know if there's a bad thing to do with potatoes. And carrots are the same way. I love throwing carrots in absolutely everything. I can roast them and just eat them like candy. And so that's why I picked those two items. Next, I have pumpkins. Now, this could really be pumpkins. I tossed around boiling it down to like a specific pumpkin or winter squash or whatever, but honestly, it's all of them. And here are the reasons. One, all of my animals love pumpkins, and so they very much enjoy eating pumpkin seeds and pumpkin flesh, and I like to give it to them. So that's one thing. I also really love pumpkin seeds and pumpkin flesh, and I have also canned pumpkin, and I love it. I like making a pumpkin pie. I like putting cubes of pumpkin. I always do it in chili, like where I'll either preserve it by canning, or also I'll puree it by just baking it in the oven. and then putting it in ice cube trays and then freezing them. And like I said, I'll drop those in chili, or I just try and sneak pumpkin in, well, basically just about everywhere. I love that they store for a long time if you store them correctly. And so I can be eating on them like all throughout the winter. And I really like that, of course. So that's a reason pumpkins made the list. Next, I have cauliflower. Now, it's hard because I feel like cauliflower is my favorite vegetable. But I say that about a lot of stuff, admittedly. But cauliflower is what I love. My favorite way for cauliflower is to take a bunch of them, an obscene amount, and to roast them with oil. And I like to put like kind of, think of flavors that you would use if you were making taco seasoning. So like cumin, paprika, taco seasoning, any of that stuff, and roasting them. And I love to put them in a burrito with some lettuce or some kale. And that'll be the like staple of my meal. Or putting them in anything. Like roasted cauliflower to me is just like on a whole new level. I absolutely love it. It doesn't keep very well, of course, and it's finicky to grow. But if I'm thinking of vegetables that I absolutely have to grow, then cauliflower would make the list. Also, I meant to mention this during the tomato part. I know that tomatoes, botanically, it's a fruit, but I categorized it as a vegetable. So forgive me on that. I meant to clarify that then. I know it's always, if I don't say it, then somebody will be like, that's not a vegetable. I'm like, you're right, you're correct. You're absolutely correct, but effectively, right? You know. Anyways, moving on to the last 3 items. Cucumbers. Cucumbers are fantastic. They don't store, pickles, I guess, but I have a million pickles and a million jars of relish. I didn't realize how much relish I don't use until I canned up a bunch of relish, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have relish for the rest of my life. But cucumbers are another one of those in the garden snacks that I really love. I can't tell you how many times, obviously cucumbers are not a real meal, but I love being able to just snack on them, and also getting a water break with their high water content in the garden. I love adding them to salads. I love eating them regular. I love sliced cucumbers dipped into Italian dressing. So good. Cucumbers just in general. I always slice them and put them on my eyes too. I don't know if it does anything, but I always feel better. And so, yeah, I love growing cucumbers, and that would make my list. Next, on the second to last, again, no particular order, are dry beans. Now, one thing that you may not know about me is that I consume beans every day, generally. I love beans. I grew up in a Hispanic area, and I always take my beans. I make usually about 4 pounds at a time, which is a couple times a week. And I soak them for the full 24 hours and then slow cook them. I love beans. I could never actually grow enough beans to sustain my habit. But I love beans. Like I was watching a show the other day, and they were talking about how like nobody eats legumes anymore, or beans or whatever. And I was like, that's like the staple of my life. I do eat meat as well, just not as much, honestly. But beans, I am covered on that. I eat so many beans. And also, I know that some people talk about a stomach discomfort when eating beans. If you soak them and soak them, sorry, I don't know why I'm always holding this wood chip. I'm just fiddling with stuff because I'm so excited. But if you soak the beans, there's that layer that's on the beans. It has some fancy name. I don't remember what it's called, but that breaks down with soaking. And that's what causes gas and stuff in the system. Also, it depends on how, like if you're used to a lot of fiber, which I am. And so I don't I don't have any problems with the large amount of beans that I eat. So that's pretty cool. Also, I think dried beans are beautiful. They're a little harder to grow in our area. I'm in Washington and Pacific Northwest, Western Washington. And so we get damp at the end of the growing season and the beans really need to dry out. And so it's a little bit of a, trying to plan it out right and give them enough time to mature, but also dry, but then not also rot. And so, yeah, but you know what? I love seeing those beautiful beans. They're a little labor intensive at the end, but I love growing them. And then the last thing on my list, again, no particular order, is garlic. I love garlic. I find garlic is really easy to grow. It's one of the last things really that most people plant in the year, in the fall. And then one of the first things to pop out, like outside, not, in under lights and stuff like that. And I love the garlic scapes that appear for me around June, early June. And then of course I love garlic. I put it in absolutely everything. I like fermenting it in honey, like that's amazing and really good for you. Honestly, I just use it in everything. I dehydrate it too and make a powder. I try and do my own spices. And I try to make as much of the stuff that I consume, like where I know like origins or ingredients, and the more hands-on I can be in that, the better, I mean, I'm not like, I don't know how to grow peppers, I guess I haven't looked into it. I don't even know if it grows here or what's involved in that, but that would be something that, I like to try something new every year. It would be really cool to grow like pepper if it grows like that. Again, I'm working blind here, but and then make my own pepper and stuff. And so that's really cool. I have taken salt water from the ocean and boiled it down and had actual salt, and that was pretty cool. But yeah, so garlic is I love garlic. And of course it keeps for a really long time and it's great tasting, easy to grow. And so those are my 10 crops, and these are things that I absolutely have to grow every year. And that's lettuce, Swiss chard, tomatoes, carrots, potatoes, pumpkins, cauliflower, cucumbers, dry beans, and garlic. Of course, I grow a lot more than that every year. It was really hard to pare down the list. But yeah, so I'm glad that I saw that video and thought about, what everyone's 10 are. And so for you watching, if you have 10 that you absolutely have to grow, and I'd love to hear your list. And thank you for listening to mine. And thank you for watching, and happy gardening. Bye.